Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel and welcome to a Dred FX airbrush review. I hope you've all had a nice Christmas. It's great to be back in the studio, jumping onto another review for you guys so you get to see a brush up close and personal. Now the one we're looking at today is the Gaahleri MOBIUS. Now this is their latest brush. There's been about 3 or 4 reviews on YouTube with this brush. I've watched them all and seen the reviews that other people have done on it, and a lot of the reviews is model painters or people that you see in the review where they're spraying on plastic spoons to give you sort of a demo on how the paint lays down. We're going to do something totally different today. I'm not a miniature painter, I'm a custom painter. I do portraits and things like that. So I'll be using the trigger in a different way to what a model painter will be using it, where they sort of do like a single action movement where they sort of just puff a bit of paint out. I don't think you're getting the full on sort of potential of what this brush can achieve. There will be artwork coming up on the channel with this brush as well, so you're going to see artwork pieces, but today we're just going to do something up close and personal. Now I've got another camera set up for this today so you can see inside the brush and you will get to see the actual insides of the brush and what they look like, because when you see these brushes they all look singing and dancing on the outsides, but when you get up close, closer than what the eyeball can see inside, this is where you start to see some flaws, and I've picked up some flaws with this brush and you're going to get to see these up close with this camera. But other than that, everything seems okay. So the brush itself is the Mobius. You get it in a box like this. I'm not going to do like a box and show you everything in the box. You get your real nice packaging like you do with all the Gaahleri brushes. They come nicely packaged. You get a nice colour piece on the back with a little bit of write-up about the brush. So this is the one that everyone is raving about at the minute. In the reviews, people are seeing them. Now in the box, you get your brush, which is this one here. Looks really cool, really nicely done. Some nice little features on this. You get a screw cup to the top. These cups are interchangeable with the 98 because I've seen them on another video. So the 98 cup, which is bigger, will screw on top. What I've found with the Mobius, taking it out the box compared to say the Gaahleri the 39, which is the real budget one, the threads on the cups are better. They just screw in a lot nicer on these ones than the 39 are a little bit wobbly. Nice chrome finish on these. You get your little funky sort of design to the back of the brush, which is like a little open cutout with a twist in it. Now, a lot of it is just show with this. It does look nice on the back of the brush. To the back of the body here, you've got your dial here which dials your trigger in. So if you wind that all the way in, that stops your trigger, and then when you start to unwind it, you start to get movement in your trigger. What this does is it sets your trigger distance for how far and how much paint comes out the front of the brush. So if you like working with this, you can dial it in for minimal paint, or you can open it fully up so you've got full trigger. This piece here, where it's got the cutaway, you've got your chuck which holds your needle, and then the next piece down, you can dial in the tension on your trigger. So what that's doing is, basically you've got a spring inside the body here, and then when you tighten that up, it squashes the spring and makes it tighter. So it gives you more tension when you're pulling back on your trigger, or if you loosen it, you get a softer trigger. On this, the actual triggers are different compared to the 39 and the 98. On them you've got a little wobbly pin on the bottom of the trigger that sits and taps down in the hole where the air valve is, where the air pin is, where you press down and it releases the air. This one is basically a solid bar with like a little hole in the bottom, and that pushes down on the air pin. The actual bar that sits behind the trigger sort of sits like that, like it does on the 98. So when you move back, that's where you start to pull your needle back like this on the trigger. So that's sort of the same sort of setup. You've got a cutaway here, so you can see where your needle goes through. into this piece. And then to the front of the brush at the bottom, you've got a Mac valve. Now, Mac valves on these I really like. I had the PS771 with the Mac valve, and I've got the PS270 with the Mac valve to the front, and I really like working with these. So it's going to be nice to be able to dial in your air pressure here, right at the front of the brush, which is really nice, especially if you're working on detail. These come in handy when you start working on close-up stuff on detail and you want to knock your pressure and dial it in. They work really, really well. To the front, you've got the crown cap which comes off like that, and you've got your needle exposure. You've got probably about 2.5 mil to 3 mil of needle coming out the front of the brush. So when you pull the trigger back, you can see your needle moving like that. You can work with the crown caps on and you can work with them off. It's not a problem. If you work with the crown cap on, you can benefit with it because you can put your finger over the front, pull back, and you can pull back and mix your paint in the cup. So that's basically the look and how the brush is sort of put together. Trigger, the bit to the back, and what these pieces do here. The dial to the back, what that does. Mac valve to the front, sort of a similar setup. The trigger to the top, now this is different compared to the 39 and the 98. It's got a slope to the front, but the trigger sits flat in the body, but you've got a sloped grip to the front. Now, I find this trigger top really comfortable when you put your finger to the top. You just sit nice. It's got a wide top, a little bit like the custom Micron trigger top. Very similar where it's sort of flat. Got a very soft dish to the top, so when you put your finger on the top, it's nice and comfortable. So I will find this brush comfortable to use when I'm spraying. Another thing they've done on this as well is on the body of the brush, usually where you've got the round part of the body that comes all the way down, they've done some flat cutaways. Now, the reason why they've done this is when you hold these brushes, most people when they hold an airbrush, they tend to put their thumb to the side of the body. Now, with this being flat, your thumb sits quite flat against the body, so it gives you that little bit more feel to the side of the body with it being flat than with it being rounded off. So you do get a nice point of contact on the flat here. Whether you're left or right handed, you've got the same sort of flat side. So they are comfortable to hold when you literally pick it up. The bit with the body at the back, you can move this round. You've got a little bit of play here on the tightness of it to move it round, so when you put your hand on the brush and your finger is moving back, you're not cutting into this scallop here. You can move it round until you find the sweet spot on that where your hand can slide instead of it digging into the cutaway. Because some bodies on airbrushes where they've got the cutaways to the back, your finger can be sliding into that cutaway and it can just be a little bit irritating after a while. But you've got a little bit of movement on this and it stays tight because it's going up against a rubber washer against the body. You can just spin it round till you find your sweet spot and you're not catching that cutaway. So that's another nice sort of little feature that you can do with this brush. You've got your quick connect to the bottom that comes as standard. You also get a cap to the top. Now you will find these caps are loose. They are very loose. They come off very, very easy. That's the cap on. You can literally tap a few times and they fall off. It's not a very tight fit. Now I don't mind this because I've got some Iwatas that when you put the cup on, you will struggle to get them off. You really have to like pull with your nail to get the caps off the top. These fit sort of loose, just have to really push it on. Once it's on and you're painting, you're good to go. But they can be a little bit loose, just on and off the top of the actual cup on the brush. So that's one thing to look out for. They're the only sort of quirks that I've found looking at it as the brushes come out the box. What I'll do now is I'll put the little camera pieces of footage on the screen and then you'll get to see that, and I'll just talk through what I spotted when I put the camera inside the brush. Right guys, so on this image here, I'm looking at it on my phone, you're going to be seeing it in the side of the picture. This is the front of the brush. Now this is where you take your front nozzle off, and that's the machining on the inside. You can see the 3 air holes, and the centre one there, that's where your needle comes through and goes into your fluid nozzle. So that's that piece there. So machining on that's really clean. This next one is the nozzle, and this just shows you inside the front nozzle, and that's where your needle comes down and comes out the front. So again, nice machining on that. It's really hard to get a steady hand with this camera because it's so small, but that's sort of the machining and the thread you can see on there on that one. On this one, this is the new fluid nozzle that goes to the front of the brush. Now you can see the little channels that go down the side of that. They're all machined out. Really nice looking nozzle, very well machined on that piece. So that's the 0.2 new fluid nozzle with like the little valleys that go down the front of the needle nozzle. Now on this one, this is where you take the trigger out. That piece there, that is the actual air pin. Now you can see the machining on that. It doesn't look that great when you see it. It looks kind of bit sort of looks anything like sort of tarnished, it looks like. But that's inside where the air valve is. That part's the thread to the back. I took the spring out, and that's just looking inside where your needle goes down through the body, and that's where the actual air valve, your trigger, pushes down to. So that's the actual inside of there. That piece there is the back of the bit that goes to where the trigger is, that pushes your trigger. So that's the sort of inside of the brush where the trigger is. Now on this one, this is inside the cup. Now this is where I see the flaw. If you look carefully, you can see that burr. You can see that there. That's a burr, and that's where your paint is going to be sitting in there, guys, and that will just clog up on that. So that's one sort of defect that I've seen on the brush. This piece is the needle chuck to the back, and that's your tensioner. So that's the finish on that. Nice and clean finishing. I mean, this is up close, guys. This is closer than what your sort of eye could see if you were looking up at it close. So that's the back of the brush. That's the twist part of the back. That's the cutaway and the twist part of the back. So nice machining again on that piece there. And then this part is the etching, laser etching down the side. Nice clean laser etching. That's the Mobius logo there down the side, and that little piece where the Mobius logo is, that's where them flat spots are on the side of the brush where your thumb sits. So that's a sort of up close look at the brush. What we'll do now is we will set the easel up. I will chuck it on the airline, and we'll do some dots, lines, a little bit of shading, and you'll get to see what it's like on a paint mix. I'll do you a couple of paint mixes with this, because I've noticed some people are saying, oh, you have to really, really thin the paint out for this brush. Now I'll be using Createx Illustration, I'll be using Golden High Flow, and I will use FW inks, because that's the sort of paint range that I use. And if you get your paint mix to these consistencies that I'm going to show you, you'll have no dramas with this brush whatsoever. So I'll see you in the next step. Right guys, we've got the Mobius ready to go. Now I'm running this 25 psi on the main line. Now you've got your Mac valve, as you can hear that there. That does your air pressure. So if you want to dial your air pressure in when you're working up close, you can dial this in. It just saves you doing it on your main airline. So that's fully open on that. Always usually try a little bit of water in it first, just to see that it's spraying okay, and it seems absolutely fine. I'm going to work with the crown cap off in case we get any tip dry. Just pull that water through. Now I've got a grey mix here. This is Createx illustration. Just get rid of that water. We'll drop a little bit of Createx in there. Now we'll just pull that through. I'm just going to see now. The mix that I've got in this is probably hard to see on the paper. They're tiny little dots. Because this is Createx illustration, paint's great. It's very light when you mix it down. Now I've got this mix 1:1. So I'll just do some lines with it. Now, first impression on trigger response, because everybody wants to know what trigger response is like. It is absolutely on point, guys, on this brush. I cannot fault it. The paint flow is instantly there, and I mean instantly there. I am just nudging that trigger and we have got super fine, tiny little dots. And I can bring this pressure down slightly. Yeah, it's a very nice detail brush. Off the bat, I just know instantly I could get on with this brush and this trigger. It feels like a micron trigger. So if you're used to a custom micron, they're super fine lines. Atomises really nice. Flows very easily with Createx, and this is just a 1:1 mix. I've dropped that pressure down slightly. I hope that's picking that up what you can see, because this is very light. But yeah, trigger response spot on. I have turned the tension right up on this. I basically closed the tension, squeezed it right up, because I find the trigger's very soft on this anyway. But you've only got to nudge that trigger. So responsiveness is there, absolutely there. I'm doing some tiny little dagger strokes. And you can hear the air pressure, it's really low. I've dialed in on the Mac valve. So, trigger response, spot on. Can't fault it. Works nice with Createx illustration, as you can see. Atomises nice. Does flow well. Whether this is something to do with the new nozzle design in the front. Now I've got some black, so you should get to see this a little bit clearer on the paper. Pull that through. Again, really clean, consistent on the spray pattern. It's not breaking up, it's not sort of stop starting, nice and clean. This pressure could go down slightly, so we'll dial that in slightly. Just rocking the trigger back, very minimal, tiny little dots. Atomization on the dots. Nice. So, for a detail brush, it does what it says on the tin. Nice trigger. Yeah, it's a comfortable brush. I'm sitting sort of to the back of the trigger. I sort of sit up here. So I'm not sitting over the front. So for me, I'm sitting on the very top part of the back of this trigger to find it comfortable. But everybody sits with a brush different. Some people sit with their fingers right over the trigger. But Atomize is nice. Nice on the shading. So if you've used any of the other Gaahleri brushes, if you use the 39, yes, hands down it wipes the floor with the 39. I think it wipes the floor with the 98 as well. On your responsiveness, and that's what everybody's after with a detail brush, is the response in the trigger. I think Gaahleri have sorted that on this brush. This bit at the back is basically just to look at. It doesn't do anything when you're painting this piece. You've got your tensioner here, but I find if you were to loosen this right up and make it softer, I think it's just way too soft. It really is. It's soft enough with that dialed in. I mean, that is like ridiculous on trigger response, guys. You've literally just got to touch it and it's getting the paint out. Very, very responsive trigger. And that's basically all you need with a detail brush, is that responsiveness on the trigger. You've got the bonus with the Mac valve to bring the air pressure in. But yeah, you have got to get your paint right. You got to, every brush you've got to check with your tip dry, because you're going to get it. Because you've got a permanent airflow coming over the front of that needle. So you're going to get tip dry. A little bit less with solvent, but if you're using water-based acrylics and things like that. But yes, I could work with detail with this, but I do find you have to have that wound in a little bit more, just to give you that little bit of feedback that you need, especially when you're going right up close. You just need that. You want a soft trigger, but you just need that little bit of feel and feedback. So I would say turn that all the way in, and it's still soft enough on your tension. A bit more air. This paint is a little bit grainy because it's been sitting in the pot. It's not been mixed for this demo. It was pre-mixed with a lid on. But as you can see, super fine down. It gets the fine lines down as a 0.2 would. Now, if you're looking at a brush to buy and you're thinking, because this is a new one on the market and there's other brands that are on the market at the minute, and H&S have brought out a brush which is the Evolution. My honest opinion, guys, it's not a patch on the Evo. It really isn't. It's a very good runner-up. It really is. I can't knock it. That little burr that's inside the cup, that will cause issues when you're cleaning, because if your paint dries up where that burr is in the bottom of that body in here, that will collect paint. So I do need to address that and just very slightly polish that out with a Dremel, because it's just sitting proud and that will clog up paint. But other than that, I think it's the best brush that Gaahleri has done so far. It does the job, and at the price point that this is out at, there isn't, I don't think there is any other brushes that will match this on what you're getting at the price. If you want quality, pick a H&S up, pick an Evo up, and you will notice the difference instantly. You really will. Trigger for one. These can feel a little bit clunky going down when you press your air valve down. It's a little bit tappy and clunky, but that's either in or there, because you're normally just going sort of straight down, and then you're working with consistent air. It's very rare you're popping the trigger like this. If it was a single action airbrush where you do that and the paint comes instantly out, that's what you'd be doing. You'd be popping it like that. But when you're sort of airbrushing and doing strokes like this, you're permanently down on the air and you're moving with the brush. So that feel of the trigger, that going down for the air, it's either here or there, guys. It really isn't. It won't put you off. The form's nice. So I do give it a thumbs up. Recommended, yes, if you're on a budget, because these are coming out cheap and they're affordable for people. If you want a quality brush, you go up the next price bracket and you jump on a H&S and you'll instantly see the difference between the two. The chrome finish on them's nice. As I say, I think it's the best one that Gaahleri has done so far. Out of the brushes and out of the ones I reviewed, it is a nice brush. It's comfortable. You've got your Mac valve, so you can dial your area in. So when you're going up close, and as you can see, that is getting super down. Getting a little bit of break up, slightly, but that's the paint. That's not the brush, that's the paint. I've just got a call come through. So yeah, that's just the paint that's doing that. So if you are going super down with it on some real tight detail, get your paint mix 1-to-1 with either water or your chosen sort of reducer that you use with your paint, and you're good to go. You'll have no dramas. The 0.2s are good for, they are okay for thicker bodied paints, just got to bring your pressure up slightly. But if you're going really close on details on small stuff, 1-to-1 mix on your paint, dial your air pressure in on the front of your brush, and you're absolutely good to go. So a nice brush by Gaahleri. I'll leave a link in the description if you are thinking of picking one of these up. They're comfortable, they work like all the other brushes, they're comfortable, they work. Can't fault it on that. That little burr inside the cup, that was the only downside. That will cause problems if I left it, but I'll address that. That's not an issue. I can just get a Dremel, little polishing bit on the Dremel, drop it in, polish that burr out, and it's gone, and that will just make the paint flow a little bit better. Because they do go on about the cups being lovely bright chrome and they're easy to clean. Yes, they are, but that little burr inside the bottom of that body will clog up paint. You get the super lube in it, sort of like the Gaahleri lube. Now, the places where I would lube this brush up to make it feel better, I'd drop a little bit on the back of the trigger. Just so when you're moving back, that little bar that sits at the back of the trigger, that smoothens that out. I drop some where the spring is there. On any of the thread joints I drop a little bit, even though this is nice and silky. But I'd still drop a little bit there. I'd drop some on the chuck thread there and on this one here. And it just keeps it running nice and smooth. You get your Teflon washers in the box. Now you'll find if you're taking your nozzles off the front and you're one of these people that permanently strip a brush down and clean it and clean it and clean it, and you're permanently taking this front head assembly on and off, taking the nozzle out. When you're screwing this on and you keep nipping it up and nipping it up, them Teflon washers, they sit to that part in that little video clip where I showed you at the front end of the brush where it had the 3 air holes and the centre one where the needle comes through. That's where them Teflon washers push up against. Now after time they sort of squash and they go flat, so then you don't get a good seal between the body and the floating nozzle, and that's why you get a couple of spare in the box. So if you are getting troubles later on down the line where it's not seating right, it'll be that. So just drop the other Teflon washer on and you're good to go. So robust, it's going to be a robust brush. You shouldn't have any dramas with it. Keep it clean, don't permanently strip it down, just give it a good blast like this, drop some water in, give it a little back bubble, blast it through, wipe the cup out, job done. Stick it on your shelf and you're good to go for your next airbrush painting session. You've not got to start completely stripping the guts out of it or dropping it in an ultrasonic cleaner because you'll just damage it. At the end of the day, you're keeping this piece from here to the front clean. That's the only piece you've got to keep nice and clean here. The rest of this brush shouldn't get dirty. It should stay clean. Just lube your bits up on your threads, behind the trigger. Job done. You'll have a brush that will last. So that's the Gaahleri MOBIUS on a 0.2. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Hope you can join me in the next one, because we've got another review. I'm going to do a review on the 98 just to show you the 98. See what that's like. So thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget, if you are new to the channel, click that subscribe, press that notification, and I will see you lot in the next one. Have a great new year. Hope everything goes well, and I'll see you in 2024. Cheers.